All right, music fans, welcome. Harmless Dave here, talking real music in real time for a few real people out there, just like you and just like me. All right, here's Tony Spinner. You want something a little different? Love is the answer. Kind of reminds me of Steve Miller. Steve Miller Band. Really cool band. It appears to be a three-piece band. So these guys make a lot of noise. I like the guitar tone. So check out Tony Spinner. And he's got a lot of material. So that album is one of many. Now, if you like Elvis Presley, go over to Modern Retro Radio after you're done watching this video, or you can have it on the background. I'm not really that concerned about it. And they've gone wall-to-wall Elvis all day today. It's Elvis Presley Day because on this date back in 1977, Elvis Presley passes away. So 46 years ago, man, that's crazy. That's just, is it 46 or 56? Let me see. Trying to do the math, carry the 3. All right, yeah, I think it's 23 and then 23. So it's 46. That's a long time ago. If you lived through that like I did, you remember that day was bigger than like Watergate. Okay, it was just, I just announced on the radio and people just freaked out. The king is dead. So anyway, if you want all Elvis all the time, check out Modern Retro Radio today. So I've got a list of 5 more bands that should retire. 5 more bands that should retire. I've got to keep this pithy, succinct. At number 5, the Outlaws. They had a great run, okay? My rationale is, yeah, I kind of miss Huey Thomason, and you're down to Henry Paul, and you've been down to Henry Paul for quite some time. And I love Henry Paul, but you're not doing anybody any favors keeping this around. But the Southern rock people seem to love this. They just won't let go of their old-time Southern rock bands. They love the legacy of the band. Huey Thomason was very original, though, and vocally, I don't think there's another person on the planet that sounds like Huey Thomason. So that's your difficulty. You know, it's how do you replace him? You just can't do it. So at number 5, the Outlaws. At number 4, Kansas. Kansas should probably wrap things up. The reason for me is that when Steve Walsh left, he left impossible shoes to fill. And rather than aiming high, the band went for, this guy is good enough, so we're going to put him in there. And okay, but you're replacing Steve Walsh, who was probably one of the greatest rock singers. You know, if you come to me and you say, my favorite singer of all time is Steve Walsh, I'm going to go, okay, makes sense to me. I think he's the best ever. I'm going to go, yeah, I can see your argument there. So, look, the band has continued on, and they're apparently enjoying what they're doing. They're enjoying the company that they keep with one another, which is great. Maybe there were some, personality conflicts with Steve Walsh, and Steve's voice had changed a lot. Although I always make the point of saying he was still hitting all the notes. He just incredible singer. Just the abuse on those vocal cords over how many years singing that material, and but he was still hitting the notes. So again, at number 4, Kansas. You may disagree, like, hey, we need bands like Kansas out on the road. Yep, you do, maybe, but you need a singer who can really electrify the audience, because these songs require that kind of vocal. All right. Okay, at number 3, the Little River Band. All right, LRB. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail because this channel has had a long history of arguing with people from Australia and the United States. So all I'm going to say is this. I think this current lineup in its form without the original Australian guys has been going for like 24 years or something like that. Wayne Nelson is 73. Doesn't mean, he can't sing anymore or anything like that. And obviously, you need a good group of singers to pull this off. And with AI, and I'm not accusing them of using AI, but with AI out there, you could probably keep this going and nobody would know. You're catering to mostly an older, I would say over 60 years old audience at this point. Mostly. I mean, there are younger people there, but this band had such an amazing run from the mid 70s into the early 80s. And they're so underrated. And yes, they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I don't know that keeping this going is a good idea at this stage. Now, again, if you want to argue about, replacing more singers, maybe Wayne should retire and bring someone else on. The guys in Australia don't own the name to this band. And obviously we've been over this a number of times. It's kind of sad for them because somebody over there probably should own the name to it. But they don't. All right. The court has ruled, and I think they've ruled a couple of times. And I think everybody understands that's not going to change. And I'm not trying to discourage people from going to see the band. I've seen them. I thought they put on a decent show. But I've also gone back through the archives and watched and listened to the original band. And it's really hard to compare the two. All right. This is intricate, pristine, polished, somewhat complicated at times, pop and rock and blues and folk and even a little bit of country in there at times. LRB will probably go down as the most misunderstood band as far as how great they were musically. I mean, they're basically an Australian version of the Beatles to some degree. Hence, George Martin produced one of their albums. Not on every album, but on those albums from the mid 70s. And then, there was still some very interesting moments throughout their career on every single album. These guys were just really good at what they did. So this current band, they've had a very long run. And I'm not saying they're deceiving anybody, although people should know the history of the band. I think you're catering to a very casual fan base. They hear a few songs on the radio and they're like, yeah, that band would be cool to go see. And for the most part, it's a cool night, it's a cool change. I messed up there. It was Paul Davis, Cool Night, Little River Band, Cool Change. All right. So anyway, at number 3, LRB, they got the most out of these last 24 years as far as touring and catering to the American audience. At number 2, the Grassroots. Yeah, the Grassroots are still out there. These are guys who basically inherited the name. They don't sound that much like the original Grassroots. I mean, you could put together a cover band and say, hey, we're the Grassroots cover band, and have them go out there and perform. Maybe find a guy who sounds like Rob Grill, who was the original singer, who, again, nobody really sounds like Rob Grill, but maybe you could find somebody who sounds like him. I don't know. And yeah, this isn't like a big tour or anything. I mean, they're typically going to like Epcot and things like that. And they're playing out when you're at the casino or whatever, gambling. Oh, look, the Grassroots, It's just, at this stage, it's so far removed from the era. I mean, the Grassroots, I think, should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And their material, almost on every album they put out there, out of 8, 9, 10 songs on an album, like 80 to 90% of those songs are radio ready. And it's just an amazing achievement. And they borrowed a lot from Motown, and they just had great songwriters. And it's just a shame that they're not in the Hall of Fame. I mean, they put the Spinners in there, right? And the Spinners had great music, and they're very talented, and they had outside songwriters, and they're going in. There's no reason that the Grassroots can't go in. Well, there are reasons. I'm just not going to tell you what they are here, because you might already know why the Grassroots probably will never be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All right, and number one on my list, another Southern rock band, Marshall Tucker Band. I've listened to some audio recently of the Marshall Tucker Band, and the audience is really just pushing them along. Without the audience, it gets kind of cringy. Doug Gray is the only original guy. He's singing, and I don't know if that's a good idea. Toy Caldwell's been gone for many years, and he was like the architect of the sound. In their heyday, there's no better band on the planet than the Marshall Tucker Band. Just they mixed a lot of different styles. Some will just say it's country and rock, but it's blues, it's R&B, it's folky at times. It's a lot of cool instrumentation. Just what the flutes, right? You got to have a flute in a Marshall Tucker song a lot of times. But the current lineup, out of all of these that I've mentioned, is really kind of a disaster. All right. And I'm saying that, and I'm trying not to be offensive, but the Southern rock folks really love their Southern rock. That's why you have Skynyrd out there, and they're going to be out there for another 50 years. Molly Hatchet, which I'm not putting on these lists because Molly Hatchet solved their problem. They got a singer who is great, and they have a guitarist who is great, and their whole band, when you listen to them live, they sound like, Molly Hatchet circa 1982. And so they really did a good thing there. They chose wisely. But when you look at Marshall Tucker or the Outlaws, those things just are gaping. All right. They're gaping holes. And Kansas a little bit too, with, trying to replace Steve Walsh. So in any event, folks, those are 5 bands that should probably retire. There's a lot of money to be made keeping this going. Some of these bands won't retire because, the name gets passed down. And my hope is that they'll try to find people who can duplicate the original sound, right? That's really my hope at this point. The Grassroots didn't even try. LRB, I think they've milked it as far as they can milk it. So there you go. 5 more. I'm sorry if I offended people with this, but, I think it has to be said at some point. When is this going to stop? And again, I always make the point that the industry didn't follow up with anything that we could listen to after this. So all of these bands that are going away, there's no band from like the 90s that the same people are going to rush out to see. There might be like 1 or 2 bands from the 90s, but and then after that, it just gets even worse. So again, here's Tony Spinner. There's a guy you could probably go see live somewhere. Love Is the Answer, and it sure is. Just a great album from start to finish. Great guitar tone. Again, don't forget about Elvis, right? All day long today on Modern Retro Radio. Go listen to some modern retro and enjoy the King. And there's another person that is just so impactful, and people are forgetting because as time goes on, it's just like goes down the memory hole. It's like Elvis. Why am I listening to Elvis? Who cares about Elvis? Well, get a rock and roll education today and check out Elvis Presley all day long on Modern Retro Radio. All right, people, thanks for watching. God bless. Please support the channel if you can. I'm still in the midst of the revenue apocalypse and the viewership apocalypse. But thanks again, and we'll see you soon.